What if I told you that a young mother disappeared during her morning jog, returned 3 weeks later covered in bruises and chains, and the entire story was a lie she created for attention? What if I told you she branded herself, starved herself, and fooled the FBI for 6 years before the truth finally destroyed her? This isn't fiction. This really happened, and what she did cost taxpayers over $300,000. Welcome to The Secret Chronicles. I'm your host, and today we're exposing one of the most elaborate hoaxes in modern American history, the Sherri Papini case, a missing person investigation that captivated the nation, mobilized hundreds of volunteers, and turned out to be nothing but a desperate woman's cry for attention disguised as a kidnapping. This story has everything: a perfect family image that was rotting underneath, a marriage falling apart behind closed doors, and a woman so desperate for sympathy that she tortured herself to make her lies believable. We're breaking this case into 7 chapters, each revealing the truth behind America's most shocking missing person hoax. Let's begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life That Never Existed. November 2nd, 2016. Redding, California. A quiet suburban community where everyone knows their neighbors and crime feels like something that happens somewhere else. Sherri Papini, 34 years old, married mother of 2 young children, appears to be living the American dream. She's a stay-at-home mom, blonde, petite, the kind of woman who fits perfectly into the image of small-town American motherhood. Her husband Keith works in electronics at Best Buy. They have 2 young children, a nice house, and are active in their community. From the outside, everything looks perfect. But behind closed doors, the marriage is struggling. Sherri feels trapped in her role as a stay-at-home mom. She resents the financial pressure Keith is under and feels he doesn't appreciate her. She's desperate for attention, validation, and an escape from her ordinary life. Friends later describe Sherri as someone who craved being the center of attention. She posted frequently on social media about overcoming various hardships, always positioning herself as a victim who triumphed over adversity. She had a history of dramatic claims. Years before the kidnapping hoax, she had made various allegations about being victimized by different people and situations. The pattern was always the same: create a crisis, receive sympathy and attention, move on to the next drama. But on November 2nd, 2016, Sherri was about to take her attention-seeking behavior to a level that would captivate an entire nation. Around 2 p.m. that afternoon, Sherri tells Keith she's going for her usual jog. She leaves the house wearing workout clothes, carrying her iPhone and earbuds. She heads down Old Oregon Trail, a route she's taken countless times before. But this time, Sherri has no intention of coming home. She's been planning something for weeks, maybe months, an escape that will make her the most talked about missing person in America. Chapter 2. The Disappearance That Shook America. Keith Papini arrives home from work around 5 p.m. expecting to find his wife and children. The house is empty. The kids are still at daycare. Sherri's car is in the driveway, but she's nowhere to be found. He tries calling her phone. It goes straight to voicemail. He starts to worry, but tells himself she probably just lost track of time during her run. Hours pass. Still no Sherri. Now Keith is genuinely concerned. He drives the route Sherri usually jogs, searching for any sign of her. Then he sees something that makes his heart stop. Her iPhone lying on the side of the road near the intersection of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail. Next to it, her earbuds, tangled in strands of her blonde hair. Keith immediately calls 911. His voice shakes as he reports his wife missing. Something terrible has happened. He can feel it. Within hours, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office launches a massive search operation. Volunteers flood the area. Search dogs track through nearby fields and forests. Helicopters scan from above. The local news picks up the story immediately. A young mother of 2 has vanished without a trace. Sherri's face appears on every local news channel within hours, then spreads to national networks. Her family holds tearful press conferences begging for her safe return. Keith offers a $50,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. The community rallies around the family, organizing search parties, distributing flyers, posting on social media. The story has everything the media loves: a beautiful blonde mother, 2 innocent children, a devoted husband, and a mysterious disappearance with no clear explanation. Cable news covers it extensively. People across America follow the case obsessively. Days turn into weeks. Investigators find no ransom demands. No witnesses come forward. No body is discovered. Just a phone and earbuds left on the side of a road, tangled with blonde hair that suggests a struggle. The prevailing theory is that Sheri was abducted by human traffickers or a serial killer. Some speculate about a stalker. Others wonder if she was targeted because of her appearance and grabbed opportunistically. Keith appears on Good Morning America, his voice breaking as he begs for his wife's safe return. The children ask their father when Mommy is coming home. The community continues searching, praying, hoping for a miracle. Then, on Thanksgiving morning, November 24th, exactly 22 days after she disappeared, that miracle seems to happen. Chapter 3. The Return That Made on Sense. A driver traveling on Interstate 5 in Yolo County, over 150 miles south of Redding, spots something strange on the side of the highway around 4:30 a.m. It's a woman, stumbling along the shoulder of the road. It's Sherri Papini, alive. The driver immediately calls 911. When first responders arrive, they find Sheri in shocking condition. Her hands are restrained with zip ties. There's a chain around her waist. A bag covers her head. She's emaciated, having lost significant weight. Her body is covered in bruises and cuts. Her long blonde hair has been chopped off roughly. Most disturbing of all, she has what appears to be a brand burned into her right shoulder. Sheri is rushed to the hospital, where she tells investigators a horrifying story that will dominate news coverage for weeks. She claims she was abducted by two Hispanic women driving a dark-colored SUV. They held her at gunpoint, forced her into their vehicle, and drove her to an unknown location. For 3 weeks, she says they kept her chained in a closet, starved her, beat her repeatedly, cut her hair, and branded her with a heated metal object. She describes her captors as speaking mostly Spanish, though she couldn't understand what they said. She claims they kept a bag over her head most of the time, so she couldn't identify their location. They never explained why they took her or what they wanted. Then, after 22 days of captivity and torture, she says they suddenly released her. They drove her to the side of Interstate 5, dumped her on the shoulder, and drove away. The story shocks America. Cable news covers it for days. People express outrage at the kidnappers and relief that Sheri survived. Donations pour in to help the family recover from the ordeal. Sheri is hailed as a survivor who endured unimaginable trauma. But investigators immediately notice something strange about her story. The details don't quite add up. Her descriptions of the kidnappers are vague. She can't provide specific information about where she was held. The location where she was found is nowhere near the route between Redding and any logical destination. Most suspicious of all, there's no clear motive. If this was a kidnapping for ransom, why was no demand ever made? If it was human trafficking, why was she released? If it was random violence, why keep her alive for 3 weeks just to let her go? The FBI and Shasta County Sheriff's Office begin a thorough investigation, collecting physical evidence from Sheri's body and clothing. And what they find will eventually expose one of the most elaborate hoaxes in modern American history. Chapter 4. The DNA that exposed the truth. Investigators collect DNA samples from Sheri's clothing and body. If she was held captive by 2 women for 3 weeks, there should be evidence of their contact. Hair, skin cells, fibers, something that could help identify the kidnappers. The DNA tests come back with results that immediately raise red flags. The genetic material found on Sheri's clothing doesn't belong to 2 women. It belongs to a man whose DNA is already in the system. The FBI runs the sample through their database and gets a match. James Reyes, Sheri's ex-boyfriend from years earlier, who lives in Costa Mesa, California, about 600 miles south of Redding. Detectives travel to Costa Mesa and knock on Reyes's door. When they confront him with the DNA evidence, he immediately cooperates and tells them the truth that will destroy Sheri's entire story. Sheri wasn't kidnapped. She had been staying with him the entire time. Reyes explains that around late October or early November 2016, Sheri contacted him out of nowhere after years of no communication. She sent him messages saying she needed help, that she needed to get away from her abusive husband, that she was in danger. Reyes, still caring about his ex-girlfriend despite their breakup years earlier, agreed to help. He told her she could stay at his apartment in Costa Mesa for as long as she needed. On November 2nd, 2016, Sheri drove from Redding to Costa Mesa, a journey of about 600 miles. She left her phone and earbuds on the side of the road in Redding to make it look like she'd been abducted during her jog. Then she got in her car and drove south. For the next 3 weeks, Sheri stayed in Reyes's apartment. She wasn't chained. She wasn't held against her will. She was simply hiding out, watching TV, using his computer, eating his food, and planning her eventual return. Reyes had no idea she was a missing person. He didn't watch the news. He didn't know there was a massive search operation happening in Northern California. He thought he was helping an ex-girlfriend escape a bad marriage. But as Thanksgiving approached, Sheri told Reyes she needed to go back. She said she missed her kids, and then she asked him to help make it look like she'd been abducted and tortured. What Reyes describes next is so disturbing it's hard to comprehend. Sheri deliberately injured herself to make her kidnapping story believable. She burned her own arm on Reyes's bathroom floor using a hockey puck she heated with a torch. She hit herself repeatedly to create bruises. She asked Reyes to brand her shoulder with a wood-burning tool, and he complied, pressing the heated metal into her skin while she screamed in pain. She restricted her own eating for weeks to lose weight and appear malnourished. She cut her own hair short and rough to make it look like it had been chopped off during captivity. She had Reyes restrain her with zip ties and put a bag over her head. Then, on Thanksgiving morning, she had Reyes drive her to Yolo County and drop her on the side of Interstate 5, where she knew a passing driver would find her and call 911. Every single detail of her kidnapping story was staged. The chains, the brand, the bruises, the starvation, the cut hair, all self-inflicted or done with the help of her ex-boyfriend to make the hoax look real. Investigators are stunned. This isn't a case of mistaken identity or false memory. This is deliberate, calculated deception on a massive scale. Sherri Papini didn't just lie about being kidnapped. She tortured herself to make the lie convincing. Chapter 5. The ex-boyfriend who told everything. James Reyes's cooperation with investigators is crucial to exposing Sheri's fraud. He provides detailed testimony about what really happened during those 22 days, and his account is backed up by phone records, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. Phone records show Sheri contacted Reyes multiple times in the weeks before her disappearance, planning her escape. Text messages reveal her asking if she could stay with him and him agreeing to help. Surveillance cameras at Reyes's apartment complex captured Sheri coming and going freely during the 3 weeks she was supposedly being held captive. She's seen walking to his car, visiting nearby stores, and behaving like someone on an extended visit, not a kidnapping victim. Reyes also kept items that prove Sheri was at his apartment. He has her personal belongings that she left behind. He has receipts from things he bought for her during her stay. He even kept the wood-burning tool he used to brand her shoulder at her request. Most damning of all, Reyes explains that Sheri never acted like someone in danger or trying to escape. She was comfortable, relaxed, and in complete control of the situation. She told him exactly what she wanted him to do to help stage her return. But Reyes had no idea Sheri was a nationally publicized missing person. He didn't know about the massive search operation. He didn't know hundreds of people were looking for her. He thought he was helping an ex-girlfriend with marital problems. When investigators show him news coverage of the case, Reyes is horrified. He realizes he was manipulated into being an accomplice in an elaborate fraud. He immediately agrees to testify against Sheri and provide whatever evidence investigators need. The FBI now has everything they need to prove Sherri Papini faked her own kidnapping. But here's where the case gets even more disturbing. Between 2016 and 2022, while investigators were still piecing together the truth, Sherri Papini collected over $30,000 from the California Victim Compensation Board, a fund designed to help real crime victims pay for medical care and therapy. She fraudulently claimed those funds while knowing her entire story was a lie. She attended therapy sessions paid for by taxpayers, describing her fictional trauma in detail. She accepted money from a victim assistance program while actual crime victims went without help. She also continued giving interviews to investigators, maintaining her kidnapping story, and providing false descriptions of her imaginary captors. Every interview, every statement, every claim was a federal crime. The FBI wants to arrest her immediately, but they need to build an airtight case. They spend months verifying every detail, collecting evidence, and preparing for trial. They know Sheri will deny everything when confronted. And they're right. Chapter 6. The Arrest. 6 years later, on March 3, 2022, nearly 6 years after her fake abduction, federal agents arrive at Sherri Papini's home in Redding with an arrest warrant. She's charged with making false statements to federal law enforcement officers and mail fraud for collecting victim assistance money under false pretenses. Each charge carries potential prison time. The arrest makes national headlines. The woman who was once portrayed as a heroic survivor is now exposed as a fraud who fooled an entire nation. News outlets revisit the case, now viewing it through a completely different lens. The dramatic press conferences, the tearful interviews, the community support, all of it was based on an elaborate lie. Keith Papini, who by this point has learned the truth about his wife's deception, is devastated. He immediately files for divorce and seeks full custody of their 2 children. In court documents, he describes feeling betrayed and manipulated. He explains that he genuinely believed his wife had been kidnapped and spent years trying to help her recover from trauma that never happened. When Sheri is arraigned, she pleads not guilty to all charges. Her attorney argues she suffers from significant mental health issues and wasn't in control of her actions. They claim she was experiencing a psychological break and didn't understand the consequences of her behavior. But as the trial date approaches and prosecutors present their evidence, the defense crumbles. Phone records, surveillance footage, witness testimony from James Reyes, forensic analysis of the injuries, financial records showing fraudulent claims. All of it proves Sheri knew exactly what she was doing. In April 2022, facing overwhelming evidence and the possibility of decades in federal prison, Sheri changes her plea to guilty on both charges. At her sentencing hearing in September 2022, prosecutors present the full scope of her deception. They describe how she wasted law enforcement resources on a massive scale, how she exploited public sympathy for missing persons, how she traumatized her own children and husband, how she stole money from a fund designed to help real crime victims. They show the court photographs of Sheri's self-inflicted injuries, the brand she had burned into her own shoulder, the bruises she created by hitting herself. They present evidence of the hundreds of thousands of dollars spent investigating a crime that never occurred. Keith Papini submits a victim impact statement describing the emotional and financial devastation Sheri caused their family. He explains how their children now have to grow up knowing their mother staged a fake kidnapping and became a national symbol of deception. The judge hears all the evidence and delivers the sentence. Sherri Papini is sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She's also ordered to pay $309,902 in restitution to cover the costs of the investigation and the victim compensation funds she fraudulently obtained. Sheri is taken into custody immediately. She serves her sentence at a federal facility and is released early to a halfway house in mid-2023 after serving approximately 11 months. But the consequences of her actions extend far beyond prison time. Chapter 7: The Price of Lying to America. The Sherri Papini case left devastating consequences that continue to this day. Her 2 children now have to grow up with a mother who became nationally famous for faking a kidnapping. They'll face questions about her actions for the rest of their lives. The psychological impact of learning their mother tortured herself and lied to everyone, including them, is incalculable. Keith Papini obtained full custody and has tried to rebuild his life, but the financial and emotional toll of Sheri's deception nearly destroyed him. He spent years believing his wife had been kidnapped and tortured, trying to help her recover from trauma that never existed. The community of Redding, which mobilized hundreds of volunteers and spent countless hours searching for Sheri, felt deeply betrayed. Many residents had donated money, time, and emotional energy to help find her. Local businesses had posted missing person flyers. Churches had held prayer vigils, all of it based on a lie. Law enforcement agencies spent an estimated $300,000 in resources investigating a crime that never occurred. That's money that could have been used to solve real crimes, help actual victims, and keep communities safe. But perhaps the most damaging consequence is what this case did to public trust in missing person cases. Now, when someone disappears and their story seems unusual, people immediately question if it's another hoax. Real victims face increased skepticism because of frauds like Sherri Papini. The case also exposed how easily the media and public can be manipulated by a compelling narrative. Sheri fit the profile of a perfect victim, Attractive, white, blonde, mother of young children from a small town. The media coverage was instant, extensive, and overwhelmingly sympathetic. Would the response have been the same if she hadn't fit that profile? It's a disturbing question the case forces us to confront about media bias and which missing persons receive attention. Psychologists who studied the case believe Sheri exhibited signs of factitious disorder, a mental condition where someone fabricates illness or trauma to receive care and attention. In extreme cases, sufferers will harm themselves to make their stories more believable. Sheri's behavior fits this pattern perfectly. She didn't fake the kidnapping for money initially. She did it for the attention, the sympathy, the feeling of being important and cared for. The victim compensation money came later, after she realized she could profit from the lie. But the most chilling aspect is how far she was willing to go. Branding herself with a burning tool, starving herself for weeks, cutting off her own hair. These aren't the actions of someone making a minor false report. This is someone so desperate for attention that they're willing to endure physical torture. In 2024, documentaries and true crime podcasts examined the case in detail, interviewing investigators, psychologists, and people close to Sheri. They don't offer easy answers about why she did it, but they reveal the extent of her manipulation and the warning signs that were missed. Sherri Papini is now living quietly, banned from social media as part of her supervised release conditions. She's required to undergo mental health treatment and is prohibited from profiting from her story through book deals or media appearances. But the question remains, is she genuinely remorseful, or does she still see herself as the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of an elaborate fraud? The truth is, we may never fully understand why Sherri Papini did what she did. We can study the psychology, analyze the behavior patterns, examine the underlying mental health issues. But at the end of the day, only Sheri knows the real reason she was willing to torture herself and destroy her family for attention. What we do know is this: Sherri Papini fooled America. She fooled the FBI. She fooled her own husband and children. And for a while, she got exactly what she wanted: to be the center of attention, to be seen as important, to feel special. But the price she paid was everything: her marriage, her children, her freedom, her reputation, and her future. The lie grew so big she couldn't control it anymore, and when the truth finally emerged, it destroyed everything she'd built. So what do you think? Was Sherri Papini a victim of mental illness who needs compassion? Or was she a calculating fraud who deserves every consequence she received? Subscribe to The Secret Chronicles as we continue exposing the deceptions hiding in plain sight. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, in a world where attention has become currency, some people are willing to pay any price to feel seen, even if it means destroying everything and everyone around them. Sherri Papini paid that price, and she'll spend the rest of her life living with the consequences of the lie that grew too big to control.